long time, I was scared to share my true color, to be who I truly was. I was hiding in the story I was reading, fearful of what people will think about me. But this ends now. I have stopped running. I decide to accept my diversity. Today, I will share our story of neurodiversity and mental health awareness. Welcome on the ADHD Melly Show. Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well today. And like I always do, I'm going to show you my focus drink of the day. And it's not only that, we're going to talk to the founder today of ZerodB. I'm going to ask him questions about the drinks and everything. But don't worry, that's not going to be a big commercial about the drink and everything. We're going to go deeply in his life as well. We're going to learn about why the beverage was invented, etc., and why it's so important to just be yourself and just find other alternative ways to help with our anxiety. So let's go. I'm bringing now Gary Leblanc.
Bonjour.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very fine. Thank you so much for being here. So like I like to ask all my guests just to introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, my name is Gary Leblanc. I'm the founder and CEO of ZerodB. I'm from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, but I spent a lot of my time in Montreal, and now I live in Toronto. So I could have done this in French. It would have been a lot more difficult, Melly. So.
And I don't think that my public will be able to understand French anyway, because they're all around the world. I have a lot of people in the UK as well, so I'm not sure French would have been the right language anyway. So I don't know if anybody's here today, but like I always say, this will be in repeat all the time on YouTube, so please follow my YouTube channels. So my question will, where came that idea of making a beverage to help people quiet their mind?
Yeah, so this came from, well, I started my company about 9 years ago, and it was because a dear friend of mine was diagnosed with lymphoma. So I'm a certified coach and trainer, as well as me being in manufacturing my whole life. So I come from the manufacturing world. I was vice president for Bacardi, and I knew a lot about beverages. And then when I combined that with my coaching and trading, I started to really get into health and well-being. And I wrote a book called Find Your Superhuman. And then from that, I started to look into different beverages. And we had designed beverages that were functional and organic. And then in looking around on what functional benefits we could provide, we found that, anxiety and modulating anxiety was a really big problem, and it was an up-and-coming problem. So, when we looked at the beverages, it's a convenient way to consume something. It's a very balanced, organic way, and we thought it really fit with my background and our partners.
Talk to me a little bit more about your book.
So I wrote a book called Find Your Superhuman. My screen, I can see you, but I'm frozen for some reason. Can you see me?
All is fine. Everything's fine.
Okay,
I
great.
see you very clear.
Perfect. So I wrote this book, Find Your Superhuman, and essentially Find Your Superhuman is a book about life engineering. So again, I said my background was engineering and business. So I kind of combine those two, being a coach and trainer as well, and I call it life engineering. And Find Your Superhuman is truly about helping people unlock their unique potential. I believe that everybody has a unique gift, and that's not easy for people to necessarily believe, because everybody thinks they have something that others don't, but everybody has a gift, and it's a way that they can connect with people. And I believe when you connect with yourself, when you're aligned with who you are, you can then better connect with others. And that's what Find Your Superhuman's about. It's about helping people really nail down their stress, their nutrition, their fitness, just to create a vessel that'll be more healthy.
So when you start doing all your research for creating ZerodB, what did you look into it, all this ingredient that you have in the beverage?
Yeah, so that's a great question. When I was looking at anxiety, at first, back when we were looking at beverages, we were looking at the different compounds that people were claiming that would help modulate, help reduce anxiety. And when I was going to conferences, I had met our partners, Neurotherex, and our partners had been studying. So these are three principles that are all in that field for over 20, 30 years. And they had been studying where anxiety lives in the brain. And this is research, again, over decades on the specific pathways and the specific receptors and compounds that actually work to help you deal with anxiety. And that's how we started to shape what's in our beverage. And the research was around specific organic extracts that, when put together, they worked together almost like turbos on a car to help us control that anxiety. And this was through studying over 100 different extracts, infinite different permutations, and a specific proprietary platform to measure activity in this part of the brain. So that's a lot of science to say that everything was designed for a reason, therapeutically dosed, scientifically validated. So that's how we came up with our specific ZerodB extracts.
Have you worked with scientists to make it? What was your step to create it?
Yeah, so our partners, Neurotherex, they were part and parcel with us putting this together. So I already had an organic energy beverage and an organic calming beverage. So when we met our partners, we all worked together to shape this new beverage with those extracts. And again, making beverages isn't easy, right? You have to bring everything together. You have to make it taste fantastic. We wanted to have our calories at around 50 calories because we have real organic juice in there. So when you put all that together, you really want to have everybody to have a say, because the science was critical for us. So we worked hand in hand with our partners the whole way.
So this is which version is this one? I guess that you did version before that, before selling it. So how much version did it take to bring this one in the market?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say we probably went through 50 to 60 versions of each beverage. Yeah, over the lifespan. And we're really excited because we're launching in 2 major retailers this summer, and we just signed an international deal, and we're launching the final version for now of our beverages, which we're really excited about. We got to a wonderful balanced place. So there is a lot of work put into putting beverages together when you're doing it responsibly and you're doing it for the long term.
So people were asking, when is it coming in the US and UK? Because a lot of people were looking into it in my public, and they were like, why can I not have it now? When is coming?
Yeah, so the UK, that's an interesting conversation. We just signed an international deal 3 weeks ago. So we'll be discussing with them which markets they're going to open up when. And the US, we did sell in the US online, but we wanted to get Canada rolling first. So my best guess for the US would be next fall, so fall of 2023. But we will start selling online into the US this year.
Amazing. So if you're watching this, you will be able to get ZerodB very soon into your house. Because yes, like you told me when we did a meeting, the problem is shipping, right? It's just to make sure that the product is legal in the country that you're selling, and also shipping fees as well.
Exactly. And that's the beauty with ZerodB. All the ingredients in our beverages are common plants. They're plants that we've been consuming for a long time. So we can sell our drinks anywhere throughout the world.
Can you please tell me a little bit more about the ingredient that you use in the drinks? And what's the component and why are they there?
Yeah, for sure. So this is the original. So this is ZerodB Focus and Calm. So all of our drinks have 5 super extracts in them. And we have hops, echinacea, cacao, licorice root. And when we look at the main ingredients, they all work specifically together. So while we have hops, we actually have two different hops in our drink. And people will wonder why we have two different hops. But depending on where things are grown, how they're extracted, they have different profiles. And we've actually measured the profiles of all of our extracts. So those are the 5 different extracts: 2 hops, echinacea, licorice root, and cacao. And then for the different functions, so that provides the focus. For the original, the focus and calm, we also have Sisandra, which is an adaptogen, so it helps balance out our hormones. And we have magnesium and vitamin B12. So we give an overall calming roundness to it. Now you're drinking the Plus Energy. The Plus Energy, I obviously love it, but I'm biased. But in the Plus Energy, we have a stacked formula. We have the 5 extracts for focus, and then we actually add 8 nutraceuticals for the energy component. And again, these are all organic. So we have organic yerba mate, we have organic guarana, we have 5 B vitamins, so a beautiful B complex, because oftentimes people are deficient in certain B vitamins, and that's why they lack energy. So we want to make sure that we provide those B vitamins. And then we have beetroot for endurance. So it's a beautifully rounded formula. We have about 80 milligrams of caffeine in our Plus Energy. That's like a small cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. So it's just enough to give you a little bit of a boost. It's great for your brain, and it's a perfect afternoon occasion where you've had a lot of anxiety from the morning and you just need to focus in the afternoon. I love having a Plus Energy. Actually, today I'm having the original because I don't really need any more energy. I just had my double espresso in a lunch, so I'm wanting to be focused and calm today.
And the problem for me with ADHD is sometimes caffeine makes me sleep. So I think because it's out. Yeah, I know that's a little bit weird, but sometimes it just makes me sleep. I don't know why. But with at the same time, it makes me focus. So it's maybe one of the only drinks with energy that I feel the energy for once, you know?
Wow. That's super interesting. And it's one of the reasons why we put multiple different sources of energy in there, because some people are lacking energy for different reasons. And to make that all taste great is actually quite difficult because, like I said, we have 13 natural organic ingredients in there that you have to make taste fantastic. So it's, it was a labor of love, I'll tell you, Melly. It is not an easy process.
And I understand, and I'm happy that it does taste good. And my roommate took one, the original, and he smokes weed, okay? And he finds that it really helped him to relax, almost as good as a joint, just to tell you how good it is. So
wow, interesting. Yeah, you know what? We've gotten that from a few people, because a lot of people don't really know what it feels like to truly relax. Mm-hmm. So I think it's great feedback whenever we get those comments.
And it's true, even for me, relaxing is very hard, and I found it and sometimes I just add Insomnia, and I take the original, of course, and I just pop to sleep, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's a one,
just go
one
ahead.
Little comment. Yeah, just one little comment around those lines. You know, what I do love doing sometimes is on a quiet afternoon, I like having the original to focus and calm and just sit and breathe for a while. You know, I talk about the drinks being a catalyst because there are a lot of other ways we can help calm the mind sustainably, and breathing and meditating are a great way to calm ourselves down. So it's interesting when you have one of these and then you just take time to breathe. Within 10 to 15 minutes, you literally start to feel completely different. So it's a wonderful practice.
So did I know that you did suffer yourself with anxiety. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that story?
Yeah, I suffer with anxiety now. You know, I believe I don't like to label things per se. So I see most things as spectrums, right? And without the label, we can talk about things openly. So I believe all of us have anxiety. You know, that's a very natural state of being. For myself, when I think of anxiety, I think of anxiety as an underlying lack of peace, right? I find myself very infrequently accepting now as it is. So I constantly have this underlying anxiety. And I believe for me, what this provides is it provides a little eye in the hurricane. So while I have a lot of different methods to manage my anxiety, like the way I eat, the way I sleep, my fitness, my meditation, my breathing, all of those help my anxiety. But, it truly is something that every once in a while I need a little bit of a nudge. And I think everybody can speak more openly about anxiety because we all have it. There's no magic formula for us not to feel anxiety. That's part of being alive. So I think it's how we manage it. I think that's the conversation.
So how do you manage your anxiety? Forget the drink. If you didn't have the
Yeah.
drink, how will you manage it?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I write a lot about, I'm a big philosophy junkie, you could say. So the way I manage anxiety is I try to control as much of my environment as I can and accept what I can't control, right? So I'm very much a creature of certain habits. So I have a very controlled morning where I'll wake up and I'll have my glass of water, then I'll do a 10-minute meditation, then I'll do a negative visualization to really drive up a feeling of gratitude. Then I'll read what I call my superhuman life. And my superhuman life is a summary of a life I envision 5 years from now, looking back. So that really shapes my morning. And then I do some movement, and then I have my organic coffee. And that really starts me off well. That gets the chemical profile in my brain in a positive space. It gets my brain waves nice and back to normal after a bit of a cortisol spike when I wake up. So that's what I do in the mornings. Again, sleep is incredibly key. So I'm very critical on how I sleep. Movement is key. I find that when I get severe anxiety, I have what's called an emergency kit. It's 6 things that I do, and movement is one of them. So you want to sprint for 20 or 30 seconds, get that blood flowing, get that chemical profile changing. So those are all little tips and habits that I do on top of my routine to help deal with spikes of anxiety.
So how do you feel now that you're in live?
Live on air?
No, like now, like speaking
Now I
with
feel.
people listening to you. How do you feel right now?
Oh yeah, now I feel fine. Actually, I'm my most comfortable. I'm my I'm my most comfortable when I'm being questioned and when I'm talking about this because honestly, and people know me. We have a course on character called "Quiet the Noise," which is our tagline. I love this. Like I love talking about it. I love building courses around it. I love talking to people about it. So if I did this 4 hours a day, I'd be a happy man.
My Jeffrey has a good comment right now. I don't know if you can read it on the right of your screen.
Yeah, I can.
So do you have something to say about that?
Interesting. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Thanks, Jeff. Again, we all react differently to different compounds, period. So while there is research on how certain compounds act in the brain, obviously there's a spectrum of people and a different spectrum of reactions that are going to happen within the body. So I appreciate that study. There's a lot of, especially caffeine, there's a lot of specific differences from person to person. The half-life of caffeine is typically about 5 hours. So when you consume caffeine, for a lot of people, and again, we won't get into too much of the chemistry, but what caffeine does is it parks in these receptors where adenosine parks. And that's what builds up over time to make us more drowsy throughout the day. So what caffeine does is it parks in those spots and it prevents us from getting drowsy. Different people react differently to this compound in how it binds to these receptors, in how your body processes it, and in how we inherently react to it. So I think we all have to just take all of this research and say, well, you know what, for me, it might affect me differently. So it does change from person to person.
Thank you, Jeff, for commenting that. I really appreciate it. And Melody asked you also a great question. Is it reducing? It's more of a goal than managing or control it.
Actually, I don't agree with that for myself because I deal very well with caffeine, and caffeine is a great nootropic. So, nootropics are compounds that help increase cognitive function. And caffeine has been shown to help increase cognitive function. So, for me, it works very well. But to your point, um, for me, it's not about reducing as much as I find what a functional profile looks like for me. And that means I do a French press coffee in the morning. I find that very relaxing and it helps me. I do this about 1 hour after I wake up. And then I have a little double espresso around 1:30 because we have a little bit of a
Mm-hmm.
dip in the afternoon, a circadian dip. So, I think it, again, it's person to person. For me, it's more about maintaining what works. I don't see caffeine in its organic, natural state as inherently negative at all.
Why do you think people think caffeine is negative? And they always say
Well,
to reduce it.
yeah. Well, I think people, well, there's a bunch of different potential reasons for that, but I think people don't necessarily use it effectively. There's a lot of caffeine that's processed caffeine. So, in a lot of other energy drinks, it'll be actually processed caffeine added to the beverage. Now, our caffeine comes from yerba mate and guarana. And within all these plants, including coffee, it's packaged with different alkaloids. Like if you look at coffee also has theobromine and theophylline in it. Those work as muscle relaxants, as a stress relieving compounds. So when you consume the whole plant, you get a more balanced profile. So I think people are consuming caffeine potentially from processed sources and also the time of day. If somebody's consuming caffeine after 3, 4 o'clock, that could be affecting their sleep, which is exactly what you do not want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And some people just inherently get stimulated too much with caffeine, right? And that's more of a chemistry within their bodies. So again, I think the negative perception was misuse, overconsumption, and really people who were just not reacting favorably to it.
So Melody was the question was more about anxiety, not caffeine.
Mhm. Well, again, everybody's different. Now, I can speak for myself. Caffeine doesn't increase my anxiety. Now, again, we got to realize what the mechanism of action is for caffeine. Like I said, it parks on these receptors where this compound adenosine parks. So all it does, it prevents us from getting more and more drowsy throughout the day. Now, what'll happen is a lot of people, when they're not drowsy, they'll inherently be anxious. Increased energy levels almost heightens all of that anxiety that they might be dealing with mentally. So when you're getting drowsy throughout the day, that almost acts as a sedative. And for a lot of people who are anxious, sedation kind of is a relief. So when they consume caffeine, it might just bring them to an accelerated place that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it's true. Um, what advice will you give to someone who struggle with maintaining a dietary routine?
Yeah. So I just read a book recently called Burn. And it was an interesting book that's related to this question because it talked about how we've evolved and how our metabolism has evolved. And it talks about how we use energy, the amount of energy we need, and it gets down to the calories. And really, what this talked to was the fact that calories are calories. And I'll get to your dietary question in a second. But first, we have to understand that all calories are calories. So, calories from sugar, calories from fat, calories from protein, they're calories, right? Now, the problem with simple carbohydrates, which sugar is one of them, is that we can easily overconsume. You can drink 3 massive sodas and not necessarily feel full, and you got a lot of calories, a lot of sugar. It's hard to consume 1,000 calories in kale. You'll feel full. So one of the clarifications is yes, calories are calories. We also have to understand that some calories are easier to consume, overconsume than others, which is typically simple carbohydrates. And then what we do is we really have to, again, I'm not a great example because I'm pretty obsessed with my routine. But for me, what I do is I really get to know what my functional weight is. So I've never counted calories, but I know what my functional weight is. And I've been living a certain way since I've been 30. I'm 50 now. So when I talk to people about diet, I guess, and again, everybody's different, but I'll start with maybe 3 different areas. One, it's, are you consuming the right things? So I would inherently just eliminate everything that's obvious. You know, chips, chocolate bars, everything that's overly processed, that's a decision you make. So if you don't want to make that decision, then it's going to be much harder to get to a healthy place nutritionally. So I would eliminate all of that from my kitchen. If it's not in the kitchen, I'm not going to consume it. The other one is I want to give my body a good amount of time to relax and to get to a homeostasis, which is, for me, it's a balanced place. And the way I do that is I have a restricted time eating window. So I'll eat typically from 11:30 in the morning till about 6:30 to 7 in the evening. And then I'll just consume water and the coffee in the morning until 11:30 the next day. And that for me works very well. One, it helps calorie restrict in that I'm eating mainly 2 meals, but I don't change those meals. I'm still eating good things. And then the last one is you want biodiversity. You want to eat good, organic, wholesome foods, but you also want a lot of biodiversity. So I have a smoothie, I call it the Superhuman Smoothie, obviously. Why I would call it Superhuman, the book. And in that smoothie, I have 26 organic ingredients. And I do that every day. So that is my morning. And I have a video on that. It takes 7 to 10 minutes to make. You can have it for 2 days. So I think that's a good foundation. And then once you get into a groove, you really have to understand where the motivation is to kind of break those rules, right? Because life is all about motivation and friction, right? If we want to change something for the good, there's obviously a friction in changing, right? Or else we would have done it already. So it's hard to change our motivation, but it's easy to make things a bit easier to do. So make the tough things that are good for you a bit easier to do. I call them nudges. And then just keep on compounding that way. Be easy on yourself, a lot of self-compassion, and just pay attention. I don't use a scale. I use a mirror. And I can tell if stuff's getting a little off the rails. I just have to look in the mirror and I know that I have to tighten things up a bit. But this is something you're going to learn over time.
Great. I'm going to ask you after the show to give me that recipe because I'm going to put it on my Patreon page. So if you are a Patreon, that's going to be the bonus of the week. So go on there.
Yeah. I'll share that with you for sure.
So also what I was wondering is what's your nutritional meal of choice? Sorry, my English sometimes.
Yeah. So no, it's fine. So that gets back to the smoothie. Yeah, that's an easy answer. That's my smoothie. And just to go beyond the smoothie, I think another problem area we have is people have a hard time snacking in a healthy way. So I have a roasted nut recipe where I'll get raw cashews, almonds, walnuts, and Brazil nuts, which are high in selenium. I'll roast those in the oven at 350 for about 10 minutes, shake it up 10 more minutes. Then I'll mix it with some olive oil, with some Himalayan sea salt, some cracked pepper, and some organic raisins. And I'll always have that in the freezer. So when I'm hungry, it provides a lot of protein, a lot of fat, fills me up. And I think it could really help out where people have a hard time, which is snacking.
So if I give you an example, if you're on a budget because you don't have a big job or anything, but you still want to eat healthy and exercise and anything like that, what will be your suggestion?
Well, you know what? Eating healthy, ironically, isn't that expensive. The problem with us in a Western society like Canada and the US is we've been raised on a lot of meat. and meat is quite expensive. So for people who are on a bit more of a budget, I think that's actually a positive thing, because we need to start treating meat as a delicacy, right? I think we overconsume meat. And if you take that out of it, or you consume less, it's actually really economical. I buy organic eggs from Mennonite farmers. My eggs are $5.50 for a dozen jumbo eggs. That's a lot of food there. I buy my vegetables, they're all organic, but if I look at all the organic vegetables I buy for the week, it's still not that expensive. When you look at nuts, again, you don't have to eat many for a good snack. When you look at fruits, all of these are ironically not that expensive. And if you're on a budget and you eliminate going out to eat, you can eat extremely well economically. So I think in this case, if you have access to good food, it can be really economical.
Yeah, it's true. People always eat too much meat. I find it too. In the same time, you were raised like that, so it's so hard sometimes to just focus on your health and just take off all those things that you were raised to. It's the same thing
Exactly.
with the way you were raised. It can be the same thing with your confidence and etc. etc.
Exactly.
And if we're going to talk about confidence, how do you manage to be so confident in front of camera and sharing about your drinks on social media, etc.? Because I see that you're quite active.
Sure, sure. Well, my background, so this is an interesting question, because when I was a kid, I stuttered really badly. So I don't know what stuttering is in French, but you understand the word stutter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because some people say stammer, stutter, but I had a hard time speaking. I actually had a speech therapist, and that was probably due to anxiety. I'm not sure what caused it, but I had a really bad stutter as a child, and that lasted till I was 13, 14, 15 years old. My name's Gary. Gary is a horrible word for a stutterer, because G is a really difficult letter. Like Gary, it's kind of where you get stuck. So all that to say, I didn't start out being comfortable at all. Now, not unlike a boxer whose first fight gives him a lot of anxiety, by 100th boxing match, he's probably more relaxed. So with me, that's kind of what happened. I used to work for Kraft Foods, and I quickly got in a position where I was a manager at a young age, and I had to present in front of people a lot. And it was really just getting comfortable with presenting in front of people. And I believe another thing is, when something is dear to you and you're passionate about it and you're confident about it and you've done the work, that you don't have the anxiety of saying the right or wrong things. So if you can filter out all that noise and just focus on how you're connecting with the audience, I believe it becomes much easier. So combine preparation with just getting the reps in and truly trying to focus on connection, I think, is the key.
Great. So I was wondering, is something we don't haven't talked about your drink and you want to share to the public?
I loved your point earlier in the conversation that this isn't going to be an infomercial for the drink, because I don't like doing that. It doesn't feel natural for me. One thing I will say about the beverages, though, I do love them. From the bottom of my heart, I'm proud of them. And I do love the beverage, and it helps a lot of people manage anxiety and focus. But one thing I'd like to say is, quiet the noise, which is our tagline, goes beyond the beverages. The beverages are a catalyst. Like I mentioned, the beverages give me a little bit of a break, 2 to 4 hours to just breathe. But really what we want to do, and what we are doing, is we're creating a whole ecosystem of quiet the noise courses, tools. We have a journal, we have cards coming out. All of this ecosystem is to help people do the deep work. And that's what I want people to understand. ZerodB means 0 decibel. It's all about quality of noise. It's all about getting us to a place, a reference point for peace. And if we can create space with the drinks and then provide tools to help people create more space in their lives, that's what I want to drive home. That's what's really important to me. And everybody who knows me knows that that's when I get really jazzed, when we're talking about, okay, Let's get people on this course talking about character, talking about what gives people meaning in their lives. Let's help them evolve in those places where the root of all those issues began. That's what I like to focus on.
That's amazing. So thank you so much for being here. Do you have any other things that you want to share about you, about anything that you want for the last minute?
Yeah, you know what? No, those questions were great, Melly. I appreciate it very much. Again, I don't like talking about myself too much, but if people want to reach out, I'm actually very accessible. So if people want to reach out, our beverage is ZerodB. My email is gary@zerodb.com. You can send me messages, and I'm actually quite diligent with getting back to people. So yeah, if people want to reach out, I'd be more than happy.
And if you want to use my promo code and you're in Canada, you're going to have 15% off. So voila.
Yeah,
so thank
exactly.
you.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for being here, and I'm waiting for your recipe to put it on my Patreon page. Thanks you again for being here, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.
Excellent. Thanks so much.